What is going on, guys? And welcome back to another episode of Quarantine Car Talk. And today's episode, we have a pretty good topic. It's going to be gas engines versus electric motors or electric engines, if that can be said. But we're going to dive in and talk about, the pros and cons of each and why we are starting to go one way, versus another. But for now, we're going to go ahead and give it a few minutes. So if you're watching this afterwards, that it's been posted, just go and skip to about the 2-3 minute mark, and we'll start talking about the differences between the two and why we want one versus the other, and pros and cons, and all the different discussions. And hopefully people join in so that we can have back and forth and questions with different ones for different engines. So give everyone a few minutes to join, and then we'll get right to it. By the way, if you're joining in, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and go ahead and comment and say what's up. My hands are all cut up from working on the car today. What's going on, ZL1? How's it going, man? All right. Got our normal 5 people in here. Hopefully we get a few more joining us. But today, we might as well get right to it, guys, and start talking about the topic of gas engines versus electric motors, and what are some of the pros, cons, and obviously our generation, at least my generation on going forward, we love gas engines, but then the younger generations all about the electric motors, and for some good reason here and there. But today we're just going to dive right in and talk about the difference in the different types of propelling devices, and hopefully everything goes well. So let's get right into it. So the gasoline engine, or the internal combustion engine, ICE, as you guys see in my topic, has been around since the late 1800s, or even before that, in different various forms. But in cars in general, they have been the main source of propulsion to get the wheels turning forever. And we have, gone a long way and progressed quite a bit from the original engines that were coming out back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s to where we're at now. So we've got the first evolution of engines back with the Model T, and even before that, and with Ford. And those cars only had like 30, 40, 50 horsepower. Nowadays, your 4-cylinder engines are getting 250 to 300 horsepower, 6 cylinders up in the top, and then they found a way to use things like turbos and stuff to get even more power out of them. But before, if you wanted to get the most out of your engine, you had to go with bigger engines. And so in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, all the sports cars had massive, at least the top dogs had massive big block cubic inch engines, like a 429, 427s, 454s, very massive engines that only made about 300 to 400 horsepower, which was a lot back then. And over the years, technologies and efficiencies started getting better and better and better. And so we are to the point now where you have, smaller engines, V8s, small V8s with boosts or turbos or superchargers making 700-800 horsepower. You have the Hellcats making 700 horsepower. You've got V6s like the EcoBoost from Ford making 400, 500 horsepower. And all that has kind of helped keep the engines where they, like, as the main source of fuel propulsion throughout the years. The gasoline engine, as it's gotten more efficient, has been able to stay where it's at and be the primary source of propulsion. Now, recently, in the last about, I'd say, 10 to 15 years, we've started finally seeing the technology of electric motors get to the point where we can now use those to propel a 4,000, 5,000 pound car and run for long distances. We first had the hybrids come in waves, which were like the Prius and all those, and those had electric motors, batteries, but still had a gas engine that would charge up the batteries because the batteries themselves were not viable. They could not last, 200-300 miles. Then a few years ago, Tesla came out and said, well, we've got batteries that'll get you 200 miles and now 300, and to the point where now they're saying we're going to be able to get up to 500-mile ranges on our cars, which was the biggest drawback of electric vehicles. But that electric vehicles did have some advantages, and that was they had a lot more torque, they had a lot more efficiency. So I believe Engineering Explained, Jason, I believe his name, Engineering Explained, just made a video a few weeks ago or a month ago talking about how efficient Teslas were. And what they gauged was that the Tesla itself was 83% efficient in terms of converting the energy stored to actual miles in actual movement on the car, which is very, very good when you consider that a combustion engine is only about probably maybe 30% efficient. So that is why electric vehicles are starting to get a big popularity in today's world. People like the efficiency, they like saving money, and electric vehicles offer you that big difference in price savings from the gas prices, which were starting to be very high in the last couple of years. And so they got a lot of popularity, and with the technology getting more readily available and easier to produce, batteries were cheaper to produce. You started seeing the prices of electric vehicles come down. Before, if you wanted a purely electric vehicle, I believe the Tesla Roadster was almost $150,000, and just not something that people would pay money for. But now you can get a Model 3 for $35,000, $40,000, and that thing is going to be very, very efficient and save you quite a bit of money. So you start having thoughts of going one way or the other. Now, for us performance guys, we like ZL1's mentioning, I don't know if we'll ever be able to get to a full electric because we want that sound. We want that exhaust. We love that. That's what we grew up with. Those sounds are what really get us going. So that is the drawback with electric motors. But electric vehicles do have one advantage, and that is tons and tons of instant torque. You're starting to see that more and more with a lot of these very high-end exotic cars going with hybrid systems and using that to couple that with the rear-wheel drive setup and adding motors in the front to give you an all-wheel drive instant torque boost, and acceleration is just insane. It's hard to match the acceleration of an electric vehicle because of the instant torque that they have and the ability to basically individually control how much power you're sending to each wheel to prevent any type of traction or any of that stuff. So that stuff is very, very, very promising. And at least in the performance side of things, guys, you're going to start seeing some more all-electric performance cars. I believe there's a company out in Europe that came out with, as Lotus, I believe, has an all-electric, almost 2,000 horsepower rated car. I don't think you're going to see too many of those, but you will see a lot of hybrids, guys. And what's going to happen, unfortunately, is that you're going to start seeing a lot smaller engines with bigger batteries as they get the technologies better. They figure out how to get smaller, lighter batteries, denser batteries into the cars so that they don't weigh as much. And you're going to start seeing cars like, I guess the Ford GT was the first one where they downsized and went to a V6 instead of keeping the V8. Well, now imagine them using the V6, keeping the V6, and then adding some batteries and electric motors up in the front to give you another 200-300 horsepower. that's going to be giving you that all-wheel drive launch, insane, very, very low 2-second launch, but then still have the power of those big, the turbos and the V6 to get you still moving forward. Koenigsegg just revealed the Camaro, which is basically a hybrid system where it uses 2 big motors and just 1 small 3-cylinder engine, I believe, to generate, over almost 1,000 horsepower. So really, really crazy. So it's just, that's what we're going to get. And so ZL1, I don't think we're ever going to see, at least for performance cars, purely electric performance cars being the way to go, at least in our lifetime, at least even in my lifetime. I think we might start seeing a few here or there, but the majority will still be some mix of a hybrid. Unfortunately, we probably will be seeing smaller engines, downsizing in the engines to accommodate the bigger batteries and the motors, where you're going to be going from a V8 to a V6, but still having more power. And that'll be to, quell the emission standards and all that. So that's kind of some of the things that happen with those cars, guys. The combustion engine is not going to go away anytime soon, but you're going to see some changes, unfortunately. Hopefully for the better, and hopefully they find a way to make it fun. So Fernando Cortez mentions, "Hey George, I installed my cooled air intake today. Thanks." Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you got that going. Really, really helps the car breathe much better. Anita, they are actually not a bad deal. If you can, I would look for like a used one, a couple years old. New, depending, you could get like the Model 3 or the Model Y, and they're great. If you're going to use it for here around Houston, I don't see any issues with the Teslas. The Teslas are good cars. They don't really have many issues. I mean, they drive forever. Just make sure you're charging it every night if you're driving a lot. ZL1 4Play says, "It seems that that's how an EcoBoost performs, constant torque." Yeah, so the EcoBoost uses a little different thing. So they go with the turbos, but use smaller turbos. Not the same type of thing that you would normally put on a car for performance, where you want a bigger turbo to generate a lot more boost. They basically have smaller turbos, so they spool up quickly and give you an instant hit of boost. Now, where do I think the performance market's going to go in terms of the engines, guys? Again, like I mentioned, I think we're going to be going hybrid. I think we're going to be starting to see more all-wheel drive models where the front axle, at least on rear-wheel drive models, the front axle will have the electric motors, and then the rear axle will be powered by the gas engine, and then there'll be some kind of communications electronics to help show everything off. So we're gonna that's gonna be the nearest route for the next 10, 15 years. Is you're gonna be seeing a lot of that. Basically, these Corvettes, the C8s, are almost being designed for that. I believe the ZR1, which is going to be the top of the lineup car that's going to come out in maybe 4 or 5 years, will have the big twin turbo V8, thankfully, in the back, powering the rear wheels, and then 2 electric motors powering the front axles to allow the cars to just power and boost through quick 0 to 60 times, and just awesome driving. Fernando Cruz is good. Yeah, they do have the electric Copo Camaro. I think they made one of those or a couple of them, and it runs like 8-second quarter mile or something like that. They are insane. Now, the one thing about the electric motors is that you get instant torque, but then that's it. Like you don't continue to keep accelerate. Once you accelerate quickly, at some point the acceleration flattens out, and you don't keep that acceleration going. So that's where the engines, the combustible engines, can, as RPMs rise, can keep just pushing, and accelerate much faster, and eventually end up at a higher top speed. Well, looks like we only have 3 people on the line, but that's kind of my talk on combustion engines and electric motors. I think the electric vehicles are going to be the way of the future, just not in the near future. I'm thinking maybe 20 to 30 years from now, you start seeing all electric and kind of the phase out of the combustion engine. But at least in my lifetime, I'll still be able to buy, a gas-powered performance car at any given time. All right, well, for you three that are on the live right now, you guys have any questions or anything like that? This is going to be a little more of a shorter live, I guess. But hopefully I was able to give enough information out so that people coming back to rewatch it can at least learn something or get some good information. ZL1 foreplay. Nah, man. I think we're still right around the age where, at least I'm 28, so if you're 25 years or older, I think you're still going to be able to enjoy your stuff and drive around and buy the way we are able to buy kind of the old classic cars now. We're going to be able to do the same thing. We're going to be considering these ZL1s, these Camaros that we currently have now, as like the classics, not because of their design or their style, but because of their engine, the fact that they have a gas-powered engine. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have enough fossil fuels to get us through like 2070 or 2060 or something like that. So we're barely 2020. That's another 40 years from now. Yep, we'll still have gas, and as we transition more and more to mainstream electric, that fossil fuels will get extended. The life and the amount of gas that'll be available will get extended to more years. So we'll be able to enjoy our gas-powered cars for sure. Fernando, you're right. The one drawback of electric cars was the price. When they first came out, the battery technology and the motors were very, very expensive to produce. And somehow Tesla has now found a way to produce things much cheaper. It's kind of like cell phones. The first generation cell phones it's kind of like the memory drives, the memory sticks. I remember when you had a floppy disk back in the 90s that barely could store, what was it, like 200 kilobytes or something like that, 256 kilobytes in a floppy disk drive. Then we had CDs that could store like 100 megabytes or something, like 1 gigabyte. Then you had like the ultra DVD, like high capacity DVDs that could store like 4 gigabytes of information. And then now you're able to get a little memory stick with almost a terabyte of storage in a really, really small little micro SD card. That is because they found technologies to improve it and get much better, much cheaper production of storage. And the same thing's happening with electric cars. The battery technology and how to make the batteries is getting a lot cheaper. The motor technology is getting a lot better and a lot cheaper. So they're able to finally put this technology into cars and sell it at an affordable price. Think of like I guess when you look at some of the luxury cars that had all like the front, rear 360-degree cameras, or all this higher end technology that only the top tier trim levels could get. Well, they could only get them because they're very expensive at the time. Nowadays, even your base model car has backup camera, but back then a backup camera cost quite a bit, and it would raise the price of these base model cars quite a bit compared to the price of it back then. So they weren't able to do that, but now they're able to just make those, and it doesn't even change much on the final percentage of cost for a car. So they're starting to trickle down all that technology down to the rest of the models. All right, guys, so I'll stick around for another like 5 minutes for a few more questions, if anyone's got any questions. But if not, then I hope everyone's staying safe. and I hope everyone's really actually practicing social distancing. It's very important. Can't stress that enough. And try to do things to keep your mind off of it. I've been working on my Camaro, on my Nitrous system. I finally worked. I didn't work on it yesterday, but I worked on it today. Got to finally cut my feed and return fuel hose lines, and now I just got to make the fittings up. And once that's done, then I can start routing everything back through again and do all that good stuff. So very, very excited about where the car's going. I installed a few things here and there to get the electrical ready. I've kind of figured out where I'm going to place all my different components and the relays and all that, and I think it's going to look pretty good. It'll be almost stock and not super obvious around, besides the solenoids and the nitrous outlet plate. So I'm excited, and hopefully I get that done here this weekend. Tomorrow I'll get back on it and I'll finish up the fuel system setup, get all the hoses and everything ironed out, tightened, get everything nice and routed. And once I finish the fuel system side of things, then I can finally get started on all the electrical, which I'll probably be doing this weekend. And that's gonna be the fun part. ZL1 says they say there are over 2 trillion barrels of oil in Colorado alone. You know, I wouldn't doubt it. The U.S. has a very, very good amount of reserves, oil reserves all over the country. And, you know, whenever the price of oil went down and people were not buying and things like that, or they weren't selling, you know, the U.S. reserve was able to inject these barrels of oil into the economy to kind of pump everything up and keep things going as smooth as they could be. So yeah, we're definitely not in any shortage of fuel. But if we do, I mean, I'm all for E85 and corn-based fuels. So if my regular gasoline 93 octane can no longer be sold, but they still have E85, that's perfectly fine with me as well. As long as they still have race fuel, because I'm going to be needing that for my nitrous. Anyways, guys, looks like we got another couple more minutes. Want to thank you guys for joining, for sure. Yeah, man, I feel the same way. I'm here stuck with the car. I'm installing the nitrous. I'm gonna have the whole nitrous kit set up and installed, but I won't be able to enjoy it, right? Like, I'm basically gonna be stuck at home with the car. I guess if we got to go to the grocery stores, I'll volunteer and take the car to the grocery store. I don't actually even have nitrous or C16 yet, so I don't even know, like, if I plan on buying like a mother bottle to have like a major bottle, and then just transfer nitrous over to my bottle. But I don't even know if those companies are open. I'm assuming they still are. They're considered essential, but I don't know when I'll be able to get nitrous, when I'll be able to get race fuel. So I'm gonna have all the systems installed, but won't be able to test them out. How much more horsepower will I have with the NOS? So it'll be able to vary. I'll be able to run either, you know, an extra 50 horsepower with a 50 shot of nitrous. I can run 100 horsepower with the 100 shot of nitrous, a 75 horsepower with a shot of nitrous, so 125, up to, I believe I can do up to a 200 shot of nitrous with the solenoids that I have. So I can have up to 200 horsepower on top, but I probably will keep it around 100 shot, and then just run it with that. Maybe 150 shot, but probably be about 100 horsepower more with the nitrous setup, and it'll be very safe and work really well. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and end this live right there. I appreciate you guys for joining. Thanks a lot, and I hope you guys stay safe. Be careful out there. Practice social distancing, and I'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 p.m. again.